Hey all, welcome back to the Board Game Archives. Today we have a very special versus video for you. 5 different board games all reviewed at the exact same time. These are our 5 favorite board games here at the Board Game Archives. Horrified Greek Monsters, District Noir, Charcuterie, Ticket to Ride, and One Night Ultimate Werewolf. For this very special versus video, we're going to be rating all 5 games simultaneously. We're going to look at them through 10 different categories, and we're going to give a point for each game that we feel is the best in each of those categories. Then from there, we're going to rate them from worst to first based on how many points they get. First, let's start off with a brief summary of each game's gameplay. Then after that, we'll get into those 10 different categories. Now, we've actually rated and walked through each of these 5 games before in their own separate videos. So for the sake of time, we're going to keep the descriptions for the gameplay very short here, and if you feel interested in any of these 5 games and want to learn more, links to those videos will be in the description. Let's begin with Charcuterie, a party game for 2 to 6 players. Just as the game's name suggests, players will assume the roles of rival chefs trying to build the best possible charcuterie board for a party. The way in which players go about earning points is by completing various missions and tasks that are put in the center of the board. Tasks will vary depending on the type of food, which can be seen in the corner of each card. And while these tasks are for everybody, each player will get their own individualized recipe. Because recipes are an additional source of points, they can truly make or break a player's success. With an incredibly large stack of overall tasks and recipes, there is more than enough variety and replayability within the game Charcuterie. To play Charcuterie, players will take turns putting stacks of food in the middle of the table. The number of stacks and the number of food within those stacks vary by the number of players in the game. Each round, players will have the opportunity to pick up a stack of food and place the ingredients individually anywhere on their charcuterie board that they'd like. By putting them in specific positions and combining them, players are then able to maximize the number of points that they earn. In the center of the board is a cutting board. On one side is a score tracker, so players are able to actively track their progress as they play. On the other side is a cutting board where they put the food at the beginning of each round. Overall, Charcuterie is a very fun and relaxing game for all ages. Next up is District Noir, a 2-player card game. In District Noir, players take control of 2 rival mobsters. The goal of the game is to try and win as much local support as possible and control the district over your political rival. Support comes in the form of different cards, each of which represent a different part of society that you'll need to win over. First off are the minor crime families, listed as 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now there are the same number of cards per number as there are number on the cards. So for instance, 5 cards labeled as 5, 6 cards labeled as 6, so on and so forth. The player who, by the end of the game, has more of each card than the other, wins that many points. Alliance and Betrayal cards, meanwhile, can add or subtract to your total score respectively, depending on the number that you see in the corner of the card. Lastly are City cards. If either player manages to collect all 3 of these cards before the end of the game, they win automatically, regardless of what other cards have been collected. The game is played in 4 rounds. Each round, players will have 5 cards, and are tasked with putting all 5 down. Meanwhile, at one point in each round, players will be able to pick up the 5 cards that were most recently put down. This is a game of strategy where you try and wait for the best possible time to collect your 5 cards. If you're not able to play at the best possible time, you could be straddled with bad cards, like betrayal cards or a specific number that you may not be looking for. District Noir, therefore, is a very fun and quick game of strategy. Next is One Night Ultimate Werewolf, the game that I would argue is the ultimate party game, no pun intended by the title. In One Night Ultimate Werewolf, players assume the roles of various villagers in a village. They do not know who exactly they get until the round begins. Your goal is to find out who the werewolves are in your village and vote them out. Once everybody looks at their own cards, they put them down face down and then close their eyes. One by one, each character will have the opportunity to use their own distinct and special power. For instance, if you play as the Seer, you're able to look at somebody else's card. If you play the Troublemaker, you're able to flip two people's cards so that player 1 has player 2's card and player 2 has player 1. The end game, regardless of your role, is to try and vote out the werewolves. If you are a werewolf, you are trying to lie, deflect, cheat, anything that you can do to get suspicion off of you and onto somebody else. You are able to tell how many other werewolves there are, but only if you're a werewolf. Some games will have 2 werewolves and both will be aware of each other. Some games will have 1 werewolf and they will be aware that they're the only werewolf, and some games will have 0 werewolves and nobody is aware that there are no werewolves. Now, I know that's a lot of information to take in all at once, so thankfully, the game provides this handy little guidebook, which tells you all the information I've provided and more for each individual character. The host of the game will be able to read out little instruction cues so that players can take turns one at a time to open their eyes and do their specific power. For instance, looking at another player's card if you're the Seer, or flipping 2 cards around if you're the Troublemaker. Now, if you don't really feel like reading all that out or memorizing the little scripts that you're supposed to do, this game actually comes with its own dedicated app that will read out all of these different prompts for you. Now, this game is bound to get people heated. You'll be yelling and cursing like you've never yelled or cursed before. You will have your blood boil by close friends and family members. But either way, make sure that you keep thick skin and try your best to lie your way out of uncomfortable situations if you want to try and win the game. Both werewolves win if neither werewolf is voted out. Otherwise, try your best to find out who the werewolves are and cast them out of your village. Now for my personal favorite on this list, Horrified Greek Monsters Edition, a strategy cooperation game for 1 to 5 players. Players will find themselves in a Greek town in which Pandora's box has been opened and all hell has been let loose. Your job is to track down each monster and send them back to Hades. Each character has their own unique ability that they can use at any point during their turn, so pick the character that you feel you can work best with. As you play, you will need to help rescue various townsfolk and explore the overall map. You will see items scattered throughout the map and monsters at every corner. You will use these items in various ways to attack each monster. Monsters likewise will have their own unique abilities, and there are different ways to handle each one. So putting different monsters in every game allows different variations and different combinations that you can use in every single game. The game has a horror meter that will go up as players or townsfolk die. So stay away from the monsters so that they don't attack you, and strike only when absolutely necessary. Otherwise, people could die and players can become horrified. There are so many little quirks that I can't mention due to time, unfortunately, but trust me when I say, this game requires the perfect amount of communication and skill to defeat. And lastly is arguably the most famous game of the 5 in this video, Ticket to Ride. Ticket to Ride is a competitive strategy game for 2 to 5 players. Players play as railroad magnates trying to spread their railroad empire across the continental United States and Canada. Each route is marked by cities on either side and are color-coded so that it's much easier for you to be able to tell where you're going and string different routes together into one long line. Points can be earned by claiming these different routes depending on how long each route is. But in order to claim a route, you will need an appropriate number of cards. Ticket to Ride offers 9 colors of cards that each correspond with different routes across the map. So if you want to claim a specific route, you will need the same number of cards as there are squares in the route, and they must all be the same color as said route. So for instance, let's look at the route between Salt Lake City, Utah and Helena, Montana. The route has 3 squares and is pink. So, in order to claim it, a player would need to play 3 pink cards. Once they do that, they're able to claim the route for themselves, and then give themselves points in accordance with the point sheet that is given to you with the game. Players will continue the game by claiming different routes across the board and earning points for them. A key note is that they don't all need to be connected, they can be put anywhere. And as one final note, every player is given these random route cards. As route cards are completed, you are able to earn extra points at the end of the game, but if they're not completed, you lose that number of points. So this is a sort of gambling system. Ticket to Ride is a very famous game, and rightfully so. It is the best possible game, I would argue, for large families and friend groups. So, now that we've briefly explored each game, we're going to go to our rating system now. The best game at each category is going to earn a point, and at the end of the video, we're going to rate these 5 games from worst to first, depending on the number of points that they earn. For accessibility, we like to look at games from the perspective of somebody who may not play board games as much as we do. How easy is it for somebody who is new to board games to pick up a game and begin playing? And after some consideration, we've decided that the most accessible game of the 5 is District Noir. Although District Noir has a very complex and nuanced gameplay, with cards having various different effects, at the end of the day, each round is simply a player putting down 5 cards and picking up 5 cards. You complete that cycle 4 times and you're done with the game. The game in and of itself should take about 20 minutes to play through, and Alicia and I found ourselves knowing exactly what we were doing by about the 2nd or 3rd playthrough. So overall, we find that this game is very easy to pick up and play, especially considering how many more rules the other games have, and so overall, we find District Noir to be the most accessible game for the most amount of people. Replayability is exactly what it sounds like. Does a game provide enough things to do, and are those things to do fun enough to warrant repeat playthroughs? Now, this specific category was very tight. We had a lot of different thoughts about what we should give the point to, but ultimately we've decided to give the point to Horrified Greek Monsters. Horrified Greek Monsters is very replayable because of the amount of different characters and monsters you can play with. There are 7 different characters to play as, and there are 6 different monsters to choose between. One game, you may choose between fighting the Chimera and the Minotaur. The next game, you could fight a Siren and Medusa. You can flip it up and play against different monsters at different times, using different characters and different items. Overall, the reason why this game is so replayable is because there's so many different things to choose from, and each time you choose a different combination, it feels like an entirely new and fresh game. And we didn't really see that with the other games that we were looking at for replayability, so therefore we feel that the best possible thing to choose for replayability is Horrified Greek Monsters. For aesthetics, we look at 2 different things. How good does a game look to the eye, and how good does a game feel to the touch? Now, as we were recording this video, we were going to give the point to Ticket to Ride. Ticket to Ride's board is very well made, and each of the pieces feel very sturdy and could last quite a while. Our biggest concern, though, were the cards. The cards do feel very flimsy, and the colors are a bit too muted for our liking. So we ended up changing our mind, and we're going to be giving the point for aesthetics to Horrified Greek Monsters. The big reason why we're making this change and giving Horrified the nod for aesthetics is because of how well made each individual piece is. The board and the little pieces that show each player character are incredibly sturdy. Each character model is stood up on a little stand that is made of hard plastic, and the monsters themselves are made of hard plastic, so these are going to last for a long time. Additionally, the pieces that are not physically hard, like for instance the cards, the items, and the little sheets that have the monsters, are still very high quality. We also love the usage of colors in this game. Horrified has a very bright and beautiful look to it that we really appreciate, and we feel that because the game feels more thick, more condensed, and because the game is brighter and arguably prettier than Ticket to Ride, we've decided to switch the point over to Horrified Greek Monsters. For time, we like to look at how long a game takes to set up, play, and then put away. And we like to look for a perfect middle ground. We don't like games that are going to take maybe 5 to 6 minutes total to play, but at the same time, we're not the biggest fans of games that take hours. So we like to look at the games that are perfectly in the middle. And we feel that the best game out of the 5 for this is One Night Ultimate Werewolf. What makes One Night Ultimate Werewolf so perfect for time is the fact that you can actually choose how long the game lasts. Usually a game of One Night Ultimate Werewolf lasts between 1 minute and 10 minutes. If you want to have a discussion and be able to fully detect who you think is the werewolf, you go near towards 10 minutes. But if you want a game that is very rushed and chaotic where you're throwing accusations as fast as possible, you go for the 1 minute one. Additionally, you can also string different rounds together. So if you play one round and you want more, you can play a second, a third, a fourth. Or you can play a quick 5-minute round if you have a little bit of time to kill before your next activity. So we feel that overall, One Night Ultimate Werewolf is perfect for time because you get to pick how long or short the game is. That is exactly what we like here. For cost, we like to ask, does the game provide enough content, and is that content good enough to warrant the game's price tag? A sort of more bang for your buck sort of situation. And by measuring each of the prices of each of the games and looking at how much a game has to offer, we've decided to give a third point here. Our reasoning for this ties in a lot with aesthetics, but a big reason why we gave this game the nod here is because of how well made each item is. There's a lot of different things for you to do, whether it be protecting townsfolk, collecting items, exploring the map, attacking monsters, anything of the sort. There are multiple different things that you can do in this game, and since everything is well made, we expected to have a very high price tag here. However, the overall price tag was only about $35, and so we felt that this was a great game for cost when you compare it to other games. For instance, Ticket to Ride for us was $55, and the other games, while much cheaper than $35, also don't provide as much content. So overall, we feel that this game provides the most bang for your buck. Next up is immersion. How easily can a game bring you in and lock into its theme? And by far the best answer here is One Night Ultimate Werewolf. This game will make your blood boil. It will make you hate people that you love. This game is so absolutely stressful, and by the time you're halfway done with the second round, you will genuinely be at each other's throats, and that's exactly how the game is designed. This game is absolutely perfect for those who want to have a lot of very fast and chaotic gameplay with friends and loved ones, and so I would argue that because it's able to bring you in so easily and bring up the tensions very fast, the immersion of this game overall is incredible. I guarantee that as soon as you play this game, you're going to keep on coming back for more throughout the days, weeks, and months. For customization, we like to look at how easy it is to modify a game's rules and to play differently every time you play a specific game. Now, this is a very similar situation to aesthetics. When we first started recording, we were going to give the point for customization to One Night Ultimate Werewolf. We did like how easy it is to switch between characters every single time that you play. However, we got thinking and think that a much more customizable game than One Night Ultimate Werewolf is surprisingly Charcuterie. We gave the nod to Charcuterie for customization because we feel that customization is the name of the game for Charcuterie. Every single time that you play the game, you get different ingredients, you can put them in different spots on your charcuterie board, there are different tasks to complete, there are different recipes for you to follow, and so overall, every single time you play the game, it is very noticeably different. Plus, if you want a little bit more of a challenge, you can add in your own home rules. Alicia and I have done that personally whenever we play this game. And so overall, based on how the game plays and based on personal experience, we feel that charcuterie is by far, out of the 5 games we're reviewing, the most customizable. For game balance, we like the games where everyone is on equal footing, where no one person can absolutely dominate every single time you play the game. And once again, we'll be giving a point to charcuterie. The biggest reason for this is because the game, although looking simple, is actually quite difficult for everybody involved. You only have so much space, and you can't control what specific ingredients you get. You hope and pray for certain ingredients, sure, but you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. So essentially, you have to get by with what you're given. And we've found that that is very much a humbling and evening thing to play with. We've played with my mother before, who is excellent at making charcuterie boards, and yet she was struggling just as much as we were. And so because we were all on even ground, and we've seen that even ground through multiple playthroughs, we would argue that charcuterie has the biggest balance out of the 5 games. For strategy, we look at each of the 5 games and determine which game is easiest to develop different strategies and adapt them should those strategies begin to fail. And we're going to give the point for strategy to Ticket to Ride. Ticket to Ride actually includes a lot more strategy than you'd first believe when you look at it. Because there are so many different routes, all with their own special colors, and multiple people trying to claim the same route, you really need to plan ahead and know what you're doing several steps in advance. If you're not paying very close attention, you can very quickly see a route you're trying to take get cut off. You can also see access to a city you're trying to get very difficult. And so overall, you really need to strategize and be able to change your strategy on the fly should you find your strategy not working out to your liking. This is why we're giving the nod to Ticket to Ride here. Finally is downtime. When you're playing a game with multiple other people, how fun is that game when it's not actively your turn? And once again, we'll be giving a point to Ticket to Ride. Ticket to Ride has really nice downtime because you're able to see everything. Should you wish, you can check your route cards to see if you're on the right track for that route. You can check the map whenever you want to see where the next best path to move is, and you can look at all of your cards to determine the best course of action. Overall, you can strategize as you are experiencing downtime when typically other games have you just sit around and wait. And so we really like that about Ticket to Ride. So we're giving a point for downtime to Ticket to Ride because you can do so much even when it's not actively your turn. And those are all 10 points that we'll be giving out. Now that we've given them all out, we're going to rate all 5 of these games from worst to first. Now don't get me wrong, these are our favorite games here, so saying that one is the worst doesn't mean that it's bad. Rather, it's the worst out of the 5 best games. So now let's take a look from 5th to 1st. In 5th place is District Noir, which got 1 point for accessibility. Now again, this is not a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. However, we don't feel that it's as strong as the other games here in this specific video. The gameplay, while very accessible, can get quite bland because it's just putting down and picking up cards. And so overall, we view this as the best possible game for if you're going on a trip or you have a little bit of time to kill. We really love the way this game looks, the art style is amazing, and the gameplay is very accessible, however, it's not really something to write home about. In 4th place is Charcuterie, which gets 2 points for customization and for game balance. This is a very quaint, nice game. There's no stress, you're just simply sitting there and designing a charcuterie board. This could be great practice if a charcuterie board is something that you want to learn the skills for, or if you're looking to play something that is very relaxing. We would argue that this game is very relaxing. I wouldn't say that charcuterie is very exciting or thrilling, but it's very nice to open and unwind and play with. Charcuterie is just a nice, chill game for anybody who needs a change of pace, or anybody who's looking to relax. In third place is One Night Ultimate Werewolf, with 2 points for time and immersion. This is the perfect party game. I have personally played this with many different people, from people at my work, to people at college with me, to people within my own family, and every single time people love it. Everybody gets very engaged and must win no matter what. So this game is very immersive, very fun to play, and I promise everyone involved will have a good time, even if their blood pressure goes up. In second place is Ticket to Ride, with 2 points for downtime and strategy. This game, I would argue, is one of the most famous board games of all time, and for good reason. The gameplay is very solid, the design is also very solid, and overall it is very accessible for people who may be looking to join the board game space. Overall, Ticket to Ride is very good at just about everything. It may not be the best in anything, but whatever it sets out to do, it is very solid at. So overall, whether you are a board game collector trying to find the best games to collect, or somebody who may be new to board games and wants something fun to play, this is a very good addition to your overall collection. And in first place is Horrified Greek Monsters, with 3 points in replayability, aesthetics, and cost. Horrified is my personal favorite board game for a reason. This is the exact board game that got me into the board game space. It is the reason why I fell in love with board games, and it may be the board game I've played the most. Now, I'm not trying to sound biased at all, I may be a little bit, but I would argue that this game is just about perfect in everything. It has very solid gameplay, it is gorgeous to look at, and it is incredibly customizable should you want to try out something new. This game has just about everything that you could possibly ask for, and at only $35, that does make it quite cheap in terms of board games. So overall, out of all the board games that we've covered so far here at the Board Game Archives, and all the board games that we personally own, this one, Horrified Greek Monsters, is my favorite. And that's the end of the video. Like I always say, thank you so much for staying this far into the video. This channel is truly a gift of God. I truly appreciate each and every one of you, and I enjoy to my heart's content creating videos. I cannot wait to continue posting, and I cannot wait to show you all that we have in store. So as always, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and stick around for all that we have next. Take care.